The morning begins not with a bang, but with a slow, rich explosion of consciousness. As the slumber of the night recedes, the haze of dreams and oblivion disperses to make room for recognition. In those first few seconds of waking, you might not be entirely sure where you are, but then suddenly the I awakens. This is the moment the one who is aware gathers the fragments of the past to become the me, a person with memories, a history, and a list of things to do. You head to the bathroom, perhaps still a bit unsteady on the cold tile, and you glance into the mirror. There's a face looking back at you. It looks a little older than it did a few years ago, yet you feel with absolute certainty that you're the same person who has looked into that mirror every day since you moved in. This act of self-recognition is perhaps the most mundane experience we have, yet it is strategically vital to examine because it is a foundation of everything we believe about our identity. This feeling of a coherent, steady self is incredibly convincing. We believe we are individuals making our own decisions, moving through the world as a singular entity. But what if that person in the mirror is actually a deceptive cover story? What if the you think you know is a powerful deception generated by about 1.5 kilograms of tissue tucked inside your skull? When we look at the brain science, we find that the sense of a unified self is actually an illusion. As psychologist Susan Blackmore suggests, an illusion is not something that doesn't exist, but rather something that is not what it seems. Your most familiar reality, your own identity, might actually be the greatest mystery of all, a narrative constructed by a biological machine to help you navigate reality you never actually touch directly. To understand why our identity is an illusion, we first have a look at what we currently believe. Most of us subscribe to what philosophers call the ego theory, or what Galen Strawson poetically describes as a pearl view of the self. This is the idea that at the core of our existence, there is an essential entity, a pearl, that holds steady throughout our lives. It is the individual inside the body who thinks, watches, dreams, and makes plans. In this view, our bodies are merely vessels that the self occupies and controls. It is a comforting thought because it suggests a level of permanence and a central operator who is in charge of the meat machine. However, there is a competing perspective known as the bundle theory, famously proposed by the Scottish philosopher David Hume. 300 years ago, in a dull, drizzly, and dreich Edinburgh, Hume sat and contemplated his own mind. He looked inward and tried to describe his inner self, but found no single, steady entity. Instead, he found only a bundle of sensations, perceptions, and thoughts piled on top of one another. He concluded that the self isn't the thing having the experiences. The self emerges out of the bundling of those experiences. This aligns remarkably well with the Buddhist principle of anatta, or no self, which suggests that spiritual enlightenment is only found when we realize there is no permanent I at the center of the storm. Consider the tragic case of Howard Hughes. He was a tycoon, a movie mogul, a fearless pilot, and a socialite. Yet, by the end of his life, he was an unwashed recluse with matted hair and curling nails, living in a pathological fear of germs. When he died, he was worth $2 billion, yet he was dressed in rags with the remnants of 5 hypodermic needles still embedded in his arms. His advisor, Noah Dietrich, once said that there was more than one Howard Hughes. He was a man of multitudes and paradoxes, spending lavishly on starlets while quibbling over single dollars, loathing social contact while reputedly betting thousands of women. Hughes is an extreme example, but he illustrates a truth for all of us. We are often inconsistent and fragmented. We are not a single unified soul, but a collection of different characters that emerge depending on the circumstances. The reason we feel so unified is because the brain provides a convincing cover story for our sensory imperfections. We think we see the world as it is, but the brain is actually filling in missing information and interpreting noisy signals. For instance, as you read these words, your visual world seems continuous and rich. In reality, you are only sampling a fraction of the text at any one time. Your peripheral vision is actually smeared and colorless, and you possess two blind spots, the size of lemons at arm's length, that you do not even notice. Your visual world is even blacked out for a fraction of a second every time your eyes move. You are living in a simulation, a matrix, where your brain constructs a model of reality in order to survive. To understand this story, we have to look at the storyteller, the brain itself. The human brain is the most wondrous organ in the known universe, yet it is remarkably unappealing at first glance. If you were to hold one in your hands, you would find it has the consistency of a firm mushroom and the appearance of a large, gray walnut. For many who hold a brain for the first time, perhaps in a chilled dissection suite filled with a stinging scent of formaldehyde, the experience is deeply spiritual. It makes you feel humble and moral to realize that this 1.5 kilogram lump of tissue once harbored a lifetime of memories, jokes, and love. Within this mass are an estimated 170 billion cells, including 86 to 100 billion neurons. These neurons are the basic building blocks of our mental life. They communicate through electrochemical signals, essentially functioning as tiny switches that are either on or off. This is the same principle of information theory that Claude Shannon used in 1948 at Bell Laboratories to revolutionize communications. Shannon proved that a simple binary code of ones and zeros could create the most complex systems, from an iPod to a space station. In the brain, the same binary firing, neurons either idling or firing like a machine gun, creates the complexity of our minds. What makes the brain truly powerful is its parallel processing, which you can visualize as a three-dimensional game of tic-tac-toe. Because the brain performs multiple operations simultaneously across distributed networks, there is no single center or chief executive where the self resides. There is no head office. Instead, the sense of self emerges out of the orchestra of different brain processes. It is a symphony without a conductor. The mathematics of this connectivity are mind-boggling. If you took just 500 neurons, the total number of different patterns of on and off states will exceed the total number of atoms in the observable universe. Given that we have billions of neurons, there is simply no room for a single chief executive to sit. We know the self is a construction of the cortex because of the tragic case of anencephalic babies. These infants are born without a cortex, the 3 to 4 millimeters thick bark of the brain where higher functions reside. These babies can perform basic reflexes, the rooting reflex to find a nipple or the sucking reflex to feed, because these are controlled by primitive systems like the brain stem. However, anencephalic babies are never destined to experience what it is to be human. They do not learn, they do not get bored, and they will never develop a sense of self. They are the proof that you are a cortical creation. This sculpting of the you begins with an explosion of connectivity. In the early stages of development, the brain generates connections at a staggering rate. Rat studies suggest up to 250,000 new connections every second. This massive overproduction is followed by a period of pruning, where about 100,000 connections are lost every single second during the peak rate. It is a biological strategy of firing together and wiring together. Your identity is literally sculpted by which parts of the neural matrix you use. In infancy, you lack the inhibitory control to look away from bright lights, a phenomenon called sticky fixation, because the higher centers of your brain hadn't yet learned to veto the primitive urges of the lower brain. Many people fall into the trap of the homunculus or Cartesian theater fallacy, the idea that there's a mini-me inside our heads watching the world unfold on a screen. But this leads to an infinite regression. If there's a little person in your head, who is inside the head of that little person? Like a series of Russian matryoshka dolls, this explanation never actually solved the problem. We must discard the notion of an internal individual. There is no point zero where you sit. You can try to find it yourself by closing your eyes and pointing your fingers to triangulate where you are, but you will only find empty space between neurons. Our minds are a multitude of different processes and decisions occurring below the level of consciousness. One of the most profound realizations in neuroscience is that a brain does not exist in isolation. It exists in an ocean of other brains. Humans spend a longer proportion of their lives in childhood than any other animal, not just to learn skills, but to learn how to become like others. This is a looking-glass self, the idea that we exist as reflections of the people around us. As we grow, we develop different characters for different situations, a work self, a parent self, an emotional self. You might feel like you are the one switching between these roles, but that is part of the illusion. In reality, it is the external environment that switches you. Adolescence is the pivotal turning point in this narrative. This is when we increasingly elaborate the story of who we are, attempting to discover a true self by using groups, tastes, and possessions to differentiate our character from those who shaped us. Whether we are distancing ourselves from the herd or ingratiating ourselves within it, it is the existence of others that defines our trajectory. We are social simulations, crafted to survive in a world of other social actors. Understanding that the self is a constructed narrative has profound implications for how we judge ourselves and others. Consider the story of Liz Murray. By the age of 15, her mother had died of AIDS, her father was in care, and she was homeless. Yet she excelled in school, won a scholarship to Harvard, and graduated in 2009. We love this story because it seems to be the ultimate triumph of the individual self over adversity, the American dream. But Liz Murray is a remarkable exception. For every Liz Murray, there are thousands who cannot overcome the hurdles of social inequality. When we view the world through the lens of the self-illusion, we can finally begin to address the fundamental attribution error. This is a human tendency to blame an individual's character for their failures, labeling them a loser, while ignoring the vast web of circumstances that shape their brain's narrative. When you screw up, you likely blame your circumstances, but when others screw up, you likely blame their personality. Recognizing the self as an illusion helps us redress this imbalance. It can reduce time anxiety and the crushing pressure of family expectations because you realize that you aren't a fixed, failing entity, but an evolving story under constant influence. This knowledge allows you to watch out for outside influences more effectively. You can recognize when it's the wine talking or the environment talking rather than some core, defective part of your soul. This is not about making excuses, but about gaining power through understanding. It allows you to reconcile your daily inconsistencies without harsh self-judgment. You are not a single, rigid, that must be perfect. You are a collection of processes trying to navigate a complex world. It is important to remember that calling the self an illusion does not mean it doesn't exist. It simply means it is not what it seems. Think of the illusory square of Bruce Hood's work. A shape that appears to be there because of the way the elements around it are arranged. If you take away the context, the square disappears. The self is like that square, a beautiful, functional emergence of surrounding elements. It is a model our brains create to help us survive. The one big idea here is that knowledge is freedom. By understanding that you are a constructed narrative, you gain the freedom to be less rigid and more empathetic. You don't need to find your true self because there isn't one hidden deep inside a walnut-shaped organ. You are a living, breathing, evolving story that is being written every single day by the interactions you have and the environments you inhabit. There's a profound peace that comes from knowing you don't have to be a finished product. You are a work in progress, a symphony of processes that is as wondrous and complex as the universe itself.